Welcome back here to the Coach's Corner on the Vanguard Athletics Podcast Network. My name is Mike Teague, and I am joined, as always, by Jeff Melton. And today we have a special guest on. Jeff was able to have a great conversation with Coach Caleb Flores of our newly formed and I guess reestablished from the ashes the men's wrestling program.
Reboot.
Yeah, the reboot, version 2 of the wrestling program here. So Coach Flores obviously is a coach that we really like around here. And so, Jeff, you were able to have a nice conversation with him.
Yeah, the passion he has for the sport of wrestling and his guys and just living every day to the fullest. I mean, I have the privilege of having the office right next to him. And, sometimes we give each other a little barbs over a little NFC, NFL rivalry between my Eagles and his Cowboys. But, just beyond that he's just a great guy. And as you guys are going to hear in a second, what he's doing with these guys in this program, the way he's rallying the wrestling community as a whole it's something that I actually think our other programs can draw from.
Oh, absolutely.
Just the amount of people out there that want to get involved within college athletics and, such a niche sport like wrestling. It's been an honor to be a part of it. We are on this foundational admin team of adding, 6 sports in 3 years, and all of them have added something so unique to our campus. From beach volleyball, not a bad sport to play and to get people off campus to watch. And then, I thought stunt packed out the gym a couple times a year, but then wrestling.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness. I
incredible.
can't even remember the last time we had that many people in the gym. It probably was when we were on TV for that tournament game, the year men's basketball won the national tournament when we had both of those here. So it was hot, it was sweaty, but it's so great, and then the success we're having with golf and all of our just new sports on top of the rich tradition of Vanguard Athletics is awesome. And the reboot of wrestling is just another feather in the cap of the great things that our coaches and our student athletes are doing here at Vanguard.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that if anyone was at that wrestling matchup, that place was crazy. And our fans, I don't think, know too much about wrestling, but they were learning real quick. But the community came, rallied around. Awesome environment. So without further ado, we'll just jump into this conversation that Jeff Melton was able to have with Coach Caleb Flores of the Vanguard men's wrestling program.
All right, welcoming Caleb Flores, the head coach of Vanguard Wrestling. What's it still? You've worked for us for about a year, and hearing that title, how do you react? Just head coach.
It's still like I can't believe it. I'm excited. It's still like the first time I got the job. So it's been a journey to get here, but I'm excited for the next years to come.
All right. So before we kind of dive into your journey a little bit, Vanguard had wrestling back in the 70s. Pretty successful program, won our district 3 straight years, had an undefeated season.
Yeah.
They're responsible for naming the pit, making it a ruckus environment, things like that. So when you first got the job and the alumni started reaching out, kind of walk us through some of those interactions. Yeah.
No pressure. No, it's awesome because, you have a built-in fan base already. Mm-hmm. And you could always hear the stories and kind of guide you where you want the vision to go and talk about how they got there. Mm-hmm. And those are lessons that I could learn from and that we're trying to build here. It worked then, and it'll work now, too.
Yeah, so I know specifically about Paul LeBlanc.
Yes.
He was one of the most decorated wrestlers back in the 70s. Just got notified earlier this fall during your kickoff dinner that he's going to be inducted in the Vanguard Athletics Hall of Fame this coming February. So, he's been vital, coming all the way over from Hawaii a couple times. But I know there's a couple other of our alumni that are pretty engaged from the start.
Yes. Paul LeBlanc is, I've actually known Paul for quite a while when I was in high school.
Okay.
Because he was the head coach at Rio Hondo College for a very long time. And so building a relationship. So when I got the job, he reached out to me right away. And what a great man. The accolades speak for themselves, but just a great man and a mentor already for me. He came and gave the guy a really good motivational speech on Wednesday at our practice, and he's a great resource, and like I said, he's a great man, and to have a guy for year one in the Hall of Fame, that's a pretty good start to our program. So we're excited for him, and he's excited. He's getting all the other alumni involved, and we're starting to build something great here. So it's good.
That's awesome. So for a lot of the people kind of around Vanguard, they might not know a whole lot around wrestling. It's not necessarily the most Southern California sport you could think of. It's a little more in the Midwest a little bit.
Yep.
So can you give all of us novice people, including myself, kind of like a 2 to 3 minute breakdown of like what's the point? What are we trying to do when the two guys are in there in the center of the ring?
Well, our sport is a sport of, combat. I mean, you can actually put your hands on somebody. It has 3 periods. The first period is 3 minutes. Second period is 2 minutes. Third period is 2 minutes. And then if the score's tied at the end of that, the 7 minutes, there'll be a 1 minute overtime where the first takedown wins. And then after that, it's 2 30-second periods. One guy gets to be on top, and if you ride him out, that's good. And then the other guy gets another chance on top. And then however that works out, we'll repeat the process until we find a winner. So we got a little experience of that last night in our heavyweight match. So it's awesome. It's awesome. Our sport is, like I said, it's imposing your will on somebody else, and that's what makes it great, because one man versus one man, and it's your training versus his training, and the best man will win. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So there's 10 weight classes. 9 of them are pretty defined. Then the heavyweight kind of has it can kind of go as high as possible. So we got, the 125s, 133s, 141s, 149, 157,
65,
74s, 84,
97, and then
97.
The boys.
All right. So, as a former wrestler yourself,
Yes.
what's it like to be kind of tied into a weight class like that? With our soccer players and our basketball players, they're worrying about their fitness, but they're not necessarily worried how much they weigh on any given day.
Yeah.
So how much are your guys, your wrestlers, how much are they weighing themselves on a daily basis before and after practice, things like that?
All the time, and I think that's what makes our sport a little bit special, is that it's more than just on the mat stuff. It's a lifestyle. It's hard to, you're starting to diet and you're starting to get a little closer and you're a little bit edgier. Your energy level's low, but yet you still have to go out there and compete. And that's pretty special, because that's where we really get to see how mentally tough somebody is when, everybody can do it when they feel great, but when you don't feel so great, you still have it in you. And so getting to see that it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, having to sweat out about 1.5 pounds or 2 pounds right before you weigh in, and then 30 minutes later you're on the mat trying to fight for your team and things like that. So a couple of the things, there's some ins and outs of a match, with different rules of having to stay in the ring, evading, getting points for that, riding time, things like that. Kind of give us through a little bit of the points of how they're awarded throughout a bout, and then how those kind of combine together for a match score at the end.
Awesome. Takedown is what it is. It's pretty self-explanatory. Once you get behind the guy, put him down, it's 2 points. Once you're down, if you get up and get away, it's 1 point. If you're down and you reverse up and you end up on top, that's 2 points. If you're the top wrestler and you expose the guy's back at a 45-degree angle, if you get a 2 count, so you hold him there for 2 seconds, it's 2 points. And if you hold him there for 4 seconds, it's 4 points. And if you get his back on the mat, shoulder blades down, it's a fall. So it's a pin, and that's what we're always looking for.
That's both shoulder blades, right?
Yeah. Both shoulder blades are down flat. That's a fall. And out of bounds, as far as out of bounds, if you're pushing the guy out and he's not making an attempt to come back in, like he's just like happy to get out of bounds, they call him for stalling. And if you get two stalling calls, it's 1 point.
Okay.
And then that kind of set.
And then we start getting, as those points start adding up, once we get to 8 points, it's a major. And then once it's a 15-point difference, the match is terminated, correct?
Yeah, it's kind of like the mercy rule. So we call it a technical fall, but it's a mercy rule.
Okay.
So
that's great. So thanks for giving us that little breakdown for all of us at home.
No problem.
To you, it's second nature. To a lot of people listening, they're not going to necessarily know kind of the ins and outs of it. But, your life's been dedicated to wrestling. So how'd you get started with wrestling? It's especially here in Southern California. It's not the
well, I came from a baseball background. My family was big time baseball. My dad played in the minor leagues for the Brewers, and my brother was an all-star. My sister was, all world too. But I couldn't hit a fastball to save my life. And so my dad had to make an executive decision. And
made a business decision.
Yeah, he was like, come on, you're embarrassing the family name here. So So he wrestled in high school, and there was a little club, and he took me there, and then next thing you know, it just kind of came natural to me. I like to say, being the younger brother, I was always fighting for the youngest, always fighting for a little bit of attention, and so the work ethic was naturally there, and in our sport is what you put in is what you're gonna get out of it. So I was able to put in a lot of time, a lot of effort, and my dad was right there by my side, and we had a lot of success right away.
So then, what high school did you wrestle at?
I wrestled at Northview High School.
Northview High School. Okay, the Grapplers, right?
Yeah,
Is that what they're called?
Yeah, California Grapplers, Northview High School in Covina, California.
Okay.
So, I wrestled there. I had pretty good success there, and from there I went on to wrestle at the University of Northern Iowa.
Okay.
So, yeah.
How'd you do? Tell us a little bit about your experience at Northern Iowa.
It was cold. It was cold. The Midwest, I mean, I loved it. I had a good time, but 6 months of winter. Snow's fun for a day,
Yeah.
But when it's stuck there and you're stuck there, no. There's nothing like these winters. I'll take these winters all day.
Makes it a little bit easier though to stay in the gym, stay focused, and things like that.
Absolutely. But no, that experience was great. I was a Division I national qualifier. I made all conference a couple times, so it was a good experience for me. I met a lot of great people.
So what do you kind of use on a daily basis when you're working with our team? There's not many sports in which you're actually directly fighting against your coach on a daily basis in practice. But what was it kind of through your time at Northern Iowa that you kind of pull on as you're teaching these kids the fundamentals on the mat?
I had two coaches at my time at UNI, and my second coach, Doug Schwab, he just really instilled passion. And I think passion is contagious. If they see me in there grinding with them and building that brotherhood with them and really fighting with them alongside, not leading, not pointing at them, but leading by example, I think that you have faster results, and they begin to trust you a little bit more. And so being a little bit more hands-on, being a hands-on leader. So
helps you stay a little bit fit too,
right? Gotta stay in shape.
You can't get punked by your own players on a daily basis, right?
It can't happen. No. So gotta stay in shape for sure.
So kind of walk us through, the recruiting process. You're having to think, I need 10 guys at all times.
Yep.
We got to have depth. We got to have these 10 guys, have someone to go against in practice, and measuring all that together. I'm sure some weight classes are harder to find just athletes in general at that size than, some of that. So kind of walk us through how you kind of, you build a team. A lot of people can look at a football team and go, okay, I need some linemen, I need someone that can throw it, and a couple guys that run it, that kind of thing. But wrestling is probably a whole different mindset of how you're thinking through and trying to.
Well, I mean, it all starts with, do they fit our mentality? I first and foremost, I want guys that are going to fight for me. I think the school got a little example of a little taste of what wrestling is really about. It's guys that are really scrap. And being tough. And so we look for that first. And then as far as weights go, 25s is really hard, 125s, because being 125 at 20 years old, 22 years old, it's tough. And so you got to kind of look at their size in high school and see how they grew throughout that. But when they grow, they grow. We're not going to stunt nobody's growth.
There's only so much you can do, right?
Yeah, exactly. Hey, all right, we're going up. That's what we're doing. So finding guys that you could see that could be lifers at that weight class, whatever weight class that is, and then you got to look for guys that, all right, he's here, but I could see potential where he can go up one or maybe even two weight classes, depending on how he matures and through our weightlifting program. So you got to find guys for certain weights, and then you got to get those in between guys where they can either stay or go. So it's a balancing act for sure.
In your experience, have you noticed that it's easier to take a guy up a class or down a class?
Up a class.
Up class?
Yeah, because, shrinking the body, it's tougher and takes a lot of discipline on their part, But on the same side, it takes a lot of discipline to continue to eat. If you're trying to build muscle, continue to eat. I tell my guys, I have one guy trying to put on weight, and it's, hey, just as we drill our doubles and singles and our techniques on the mat, you got to hit that cafeteria. Like
you got to go doubles and single servings in there.
You got to go get your reps in at that cafeteria. So it's the same kind of mentality. So.
Yeah, one of the things I've noticed just watching this program kind of develop the last few months is your guys have some extreme hours that they're working under. They're wrestling at 6 a.m. They're lifting at 6 p.m., trying to watch their weight, go to class, and things like that. So the mental toughness that you're referring to, these guys are showing that on a daily basis, and just the impact they've had on the culture here so quickly. All these guys dove right in. They're buying into the Vanguard way. They're some of the most helpful people around. All of that. So the wrestling community at large, we brought this sport back, and we were getting phone calls the day we announced it of people wanting to help out and volunteer and things like that. And we were kind of, administratively from school being like, let's find a coach first, and then we'll kind of funnel it from there. But, kind of just what's been so special to you about just, the high schools and everything, the way they just welcomed Vanguard in?
The wrestling community is awesome. I think you guys are starting to get a little taste of that. But the Orange County, the area that we're at, I mean, it's rich with wrestling, high school history, really rich with high school. So they're excited to have a program here, and then it's so close to their homes. So just keeping them fired up, keeping them engaged is very, very important because, we got the momentum, but we got to keep it rolling. Keep rolling, keep it building on it. So, just keeping them engaged. And, as you could tell with our guys, being wrestlers, you have the natural characteristics of a good person. That's what wrestling forces you to be. It forces you to be committed, dedicated, and just overall a good man. So.
Yeah. And then how has Dolomer and Cal USA Wrestling, how have they linked up with us in such a dramatic way just so early in this program's reboot?
Yeah, I mean, they're awesome. Like I said, the wrestling community is awesome. I wrestled in the California USA Wrestling System as a child. I built some really good relationships with them. And I called them up, and, you don't get nothing unless you ask. So, they asked, and they reached out and supported us, right? And they instantly said, yes, let's do it. We want to help you. Just tell me what we need to do. And I was like, we need a mat. Step one, if we want to have dual meets and be able to wrestle, we need a mat. And so they're like, let's do it. And so Cal USA Wrestling partnered up with Dolomar, and they said, whatever you want, it's yours. And so great, amazing people.
Yeah, if you guys listen at home, didn't get to see the broadcast or weren't here in person, that mat looks pretty good. So, huge shout out to them for, gifting us with that. We've gotten hooked up with a couple singlets. Yep. We got 3 different vibes with our 3 sets of singlets, which is always a good thing.
Look good, play good.
Yeah, exactly. You only wrestle as good as you feel walking out there. So, it's such a great thing going on here on campus, and so you touched on it a little bit earlier, just, what you're looking for in a Vanguard wrestler. What's your hope, as these guys kind of age through the program, whether they're here a year or 4 or 5 years, depending on how much time they spend with us, what do you want them to get out of their Vanguard experience and be able to draw from as they move on to be fathers, businessmen, continue to be sons, brothers, things like that?
Overall, I just want them to enjoy the experience and learn the characteristics of a successful person, which is commitment, dedication, sacrificing for your brother or for your family, and overall just being tough. Because I think everyone in life has experienced some type of adversity, and you have to be tough to get through it. And so, and take ownership of this program. Whatever we do, we got to take ownership of it. And that's why it's a very great thing that we're starting in year 1. And I have guys taking ownership of the program, and it will continue through. So take ownership.
Yeah. So in addition to Caleb being our head coach, we've got a lot of talent on our assistant coaching staff. Can you kind of just give us the breakdown of the 3 of our guys and what they're adding to the program in addition to your stewardship up at the top?
Yeah. No. I'll start with my head assistant coach, Joe Ivano. First of all, great man, great father, great husband. His accolades in wrestling, he was a national champion for William Penn. But leading up to that point, he didn't have much on it. In high school, he didn't even make it to the state tournament. He went to Mount San Antonio College, junior college in California. He took 7th his sophomore year, but he stuck to a process and continued to believe through himself. He didn't have instant results, but when you continue to believe and continue to do the right things, your breakthroughs are right around the corner. And so, yes, he's a national champ, but he shows what commitment is all about, that continue to believe. You don't know when the breakthrough is going to happen, but it will happen if you continue to work. And so as soon as I got the job, I called him right away, like, hey, I need you. And he's like, hey, let's roll. Let's do this. So that's Joey Vano. And then Kevin Kelly actually wrestled for me at Mount Sac. Same kind of story. He didn't make it to the state tournament. He wrestled for South Hills in Covina. He wrestled for South Hills, didn't make it to the state tournament. Wrestled for me at Mount San Antonio College. He didn't place his first year, but his second year, he ended up winning the state championship. Then he went into Benedictine College Benedictine College, and he ended up being an All-American over there. So
out in Kansas, right?
Out in Kansas, yeah. So he, like I said, just staying consistent in your effort. Just because you didn't have the results in high school, we always talk about it. High school's boy wrestling. Now, once you get into college, it's man wrestling. And so sticking true to that and believing in yourself, And then I have John Beck, who's been an awesome asset. He wrestled for the University of Michigan, was a high school state placer, and he's a veteran. So it brings some of that grit and some of that leadership style that you get through the Army and stuff like that. So it's been great.
Yeah, and so from an outsider, it looks like you guys kind of all have different weight classes and kind of specialties there, so that that's a huge asset to these guys. So we'd like to just thank Caleb for not only the development of this program from scratch with a little bit of history nearly 40 years ago and just getting all these guys in, but we want to thank you for joining us here on the Coach's Corner.
All right, welcome back. And, man, that was an awesome conversation between Jeff and Coach Flores. You got to love the passion that Coach Flores brings to everything he does. Jeff, what were your kind of takeaways from this conversation that you were able to have with him?
It's really just cool of, the blend of, experiences these guys are getting, whether it's the Impact Paul LeBlanc, a wrestler from the 70s who Caleb's known most of his life, and the way he's coming back and being involved, from with our coaching staff, Caleb, Joe, Kevin, and Jonathan, the different successes they've had along the way. Some wrestling came a little easier to. Others, they had to grind through it, didn't do well in high school, ended up being national champion, all those levels, and just the hands-on way they're impacting these guys on a daily basis. We joke a lot of times about how some of our coaches, put themselves in drills during practice. No one can top what our wrestling coaches do. I mean, they're in there grappling, getting flipped, getting, choked out basically, things like that on a daily basis. And, that's just one of those ways to create community almost instantly and create a brotherhood and a bond in there because, those guys know their coaches are invested because they're putting their bodies on the line every day in practice for them. And, the amount of hours they're grinding through early mornings, off campus, in the wrestling room, late nights in the weight room, and just the way these guys are, just their character and their mentality and how these guys are going to work and fight for everything. And you saw that in the home wrestling meet, on November 7th. And it's just, I can't wait for our next one. It's I kind of wish it was coming up a little sooner than it is, in December and things like that. But this is just so cool. And, I'm fired up just to have it, period. And then when we start looking back to the success we've had back in the 70s, 3 straight district championships, and the alumni, and just the way the wrestling community from, Cal USA Wrestling, Dollarmer, all those things, the way they're diving in, giving us a mat, getting us singlets, donating to our kickoff dinner, helping us raise funds for these guys to travel, play some of these top-notch teams. I'm excited to see them throughout the season and then, see what happens when we go to our first Cascade Conference Championships later next spring.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. The hashtag return of the Matmen, right?
Yeah,
excited to have the Matmen here. So thank you guys again for joining us on another episode of Coach's Corner. Feel free to subscribe, listen, share, rate, and do all those fun things that you do with the podcast normally with our podcast network. But feel free to keep joining us every Friday here on the Coach's Corner on the Vanguard University Athletics Podcast Network.
We'll be right back.